The bell rings at the stock exchange, and in a very rare moment, one of the pure play analytics companies in India takes the spotlight and goes public.
We actually featured on the Deloitte Technology Fast 50 for 9 years in a row. Actually hit upon using the Kung Fu Panda movie as a theme.
What's your favorite Netflix series?
I like a bit of the science fiction genre.
Okay.
Right? I mean, so even things like Person of Interest and Westworld, Peripheral. Right. More recently, I started watching Altered Carbon. Right.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the next season of the Three-Body Problem.
The date is November 23, 2021. The bell rings at the stock exchange, and in a very rare moment, one of the pure play analytics companies in India takes the spotlight and goes public. Yes, I am referring to LatentView Analytics, one of India's fastest growing pure play analytics firms and a company with a market cap of well over $1 billion US. But the story just didn't begin in the spotlight of the IPO. We have to go back to 2006 when data was considered to be back-end stuff. But three founders from Chennai did not believe so. They believed that data could power and fuel smart businesses. From scrappy startup nights to actually building some of the most advanced analytic engines for Fortune 500 companies, LatentView Analytics has done it all. And it has carved a path for itself that very few could imagine way back then. And at the center of this inspirational journey is one man who has been with LatentView for a very long time. He has been a part of this hustle. And he is very fortunately our guest for today's podcast. He is none other than Mr. Rajan Sethuraman, the CEO of LatentView Analytics. Today in this podcast with him, we will go beyond the numbers into the stories of choices, opportunities, challenges, and the bold bets that has made LatentView what it is today. So tune in. A very warm welcome to you, Rajan. Thank you for joining us for this podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, yeah. Thank you for having me here on the show today.
Great, Rajan, thank you. So Rajan, I think I mentioned that it has been an inspirational journey, quite an exceptional journey. In fact, a company which is a pure play analytics company, as opposed to, you would have seen a lot of IT services companies, a lot of software companies coming out of the Indian market. But for a pure play analytics firm to start, rise, capture the market, and go public as well, that is truly stupendous. That is truly inspirational. So let me draw your memories back to 2006 and let me ask you questions about the overall journey. So when the firm was started in 2006, what was the thought process like? What did the founders want to achieve? What was the spark for starting LatentView Analytics way back in 2006?
I did join the firm in 2016, and therefore a lot of what happened pre-2016 is a bit more of folklore and history to me as well. But of course, I know both Venkat and Pramad, right, the founders, and then Ramesh after I joined the firm. And we go back quite some time. I mean, both Venkat and Pramad were my batchmates at IIM Calcutta. And I always knew Venkat to be an exceptionally strong networker and a very forward-thinking person, right, even in those times. In fact, even today, Venkat is the person who kind of holds the batch together when it comes to alumni events and other interactions. So it was no surprise to me, right, that Venkat decided to follow an entrepreneurial track back in 2006 after spending almost a decade plus in the corporate world, understanding what is happening right within the IT services space and what is the opportunity right that lay ahead of him. Venkat used to work for Cognizant at the time, and in fact, in his own words, I remember him saying that he saw companies swimming in data, but still sought for insights and intelligence, right? So that was the inspiration for him, right? In terms of, can we create a company that is focused on helping companies wade through the huge amount of data that was there, and how to make sense of it, right? In terms of all kinds of decision making that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So that was the starting point for LatentView itself. He was also very sharp in bringing the right kind of co-founders. I mean, of course, Pramad, with her financial background, I think she was a great asset to the firm right from early days. And Ramesh Hariharan, who I know now and who's a very close and dear friend, he brought in a lot of the technical acumen. And I think sometimes the founding team, right, if they bring complementary kind of backgrounds and experiences and skill sets, right, that becomes a very important aspect, right, of how the company can perform. Back in 2006, the initial focus was on the Indian market. I remember Venkat telling me that at one point we were working with almost 6 or 7 of the insurance companies in India, right? These are both Indian companies as well as partnerships that some of the Indian companies had with multinationals. And there was a fairly interesting amount of work. In 2008-9 is when we decided to turn our attention to the US market. 2010, we won our first account in Microsoft out of the west coast of the US. I would say that the tech ecosystem has been very kind to us. We won the first 3 accounts in the tech space. But beyond that, a lot of our growth in those early days happened on the back of just referrals, right? The good work that we were doing was being noticed by the stakeholders, and they just took us with them whenever they moved into new roles and new jobs. Even today, the tech ecosystem accounts for almost 65% of our revenues, right? And that's a fairly strong testament to the kind of work that we have been doing in that space. We also learned a lot. I mean, in some sense, you are actually drinking from the fire hose, because these are the companies that are inventing the next new when it comes to data analytics. So we've been really fortunate that we've been able to not only learn from them, but also support them, right, in terms of applying the tools of the trade to running their own businesses. That, I believe, is a very strong differentiator that we are able to bring to the table, right, in our interactions with other organizations as well. So it has been a great ride from 2006 onwards. We actually featured on the Deloitte Technology Fast 50 for 9 years in a row.
Wonderful.
I believe that we might be still the only company that has a distinction. Maybe there are 1 or 2 others who have broken into that very small group. But those were the heydays, right, of growth. And this is right up till the time that I came on board, 2015, 2016, right? We were having stellar growth year on year. Of course, we were still a small company, and growing on a smaller base is a little easier. But having said that, it still meant opening new accounts, mining existing relationships, right? Growing the portfolio of services and capabilities that we could offer. So it was all very interesting period of time, right from 2006 onwards.
In fact, it looks very, very wonderful to me, because when you started out, I think you started with the right founding team. You appropriately mentioned that the founding team needs to have complementary skill sets,
right,
and experiences for any particular startup to start building value of any real value for enterprises. I think that's one very, very fabulous point. The other interesting aspect that you touched upon was the focus on the insurance segment in India.
Right.
So I just wanted to ask Rajan, so what was the initial analytics work? So when you say analytics, back in those days, what was analytics work which was being done for analytics and for some of the initial accounts that you mentioned, for example, Microsoft?
Right. I mean, I'll start with the insurance sector, because all of us know that insurance as an industry gave birth, or at least popularized, data and statistics in a big way. Sure. I mean, actuarial sciences foundations are really statistics and math. Sure. And it is therefore no wonder or surprise, right, that our initial attention was in the insurance sector. Insurance sector in India had just started burgeoning, right? Meaning the entry of private players, right, and opening of the sector, and therefore there is a huge amount of work that these firms are looking to do, just in terms of understanding the market itself, right? The customer segment, the market, the opportunities that were present, and of course connecting it back to what it means in terms of premiums and underwriting, right, and the costs involved in running the business, the marketing costs involved, so on, right? So that was the nature of the work that we did. Even today, we do a lot of work at the front end of the value chain. So customer analytics and marketing analytics is a fairly important component of the work that we do. Anything from segmentation, cross-sell, upsell, loyalty and personalization, churn analytics, lifetime value, marketing return on investment, and campaign analytics. These are the real the bread and butter of the work that we do.
And then you joined in 2014, 2015. That
2016.
2016.
Is when I came on board.
Okay,
Yeah.
2016.
June of 2016.
Okay, so let me ask. I see that you are a man of many talents as well, and you worked with a number of marquee companies as well. So I would, Rajan, I would like you to introduce yourself. Give a certain background history of what you've done. What companies have you worked with so far?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm an engineer and an MBA. I mean, I did my engineering from Birla Institute of Technology and Science in the Pilani campus. And then I went on to do my MBA from the Indian Institute of Management at Calcutta. I joined Accenture straight out of campus. We were then called Anderson Consulting, and we were part of Arthur Anderson and Co. I mean, the split between Anderson Consulting and Arthur Anderson, the audit accounting firm, that was still underway. In fact, in some way, it was divorce proceedings almost, because both the firms wanted to go in different directions. I was part of the strategy management consulting practice in India. We were only about 120 people at that time when I joined the firm, and I was part of the Mumbai office. But because it was a very small team, it was there weren't real vertical or horizontal lines that were drawn, right? In some sense, everybody did everything, right? Depending on who was available when a new project or engagement came through, we would just get pulled into that engagement. The managing partner who was running the India office at the time, Sid Khanna, he had a knack for selling fairly interesting engagements, right, to Indian business houses as well as to multinationals with operations in India. He'll just go meet them and he will promise them that, no, we can cut down your cost by 15%, 20%, and then he'll just come and tell us, guys, tomorrow you're going to go land up in Nagpur, you're going to be working with this, I don't know, printing press, and you have to bring down the cost by 15%, right? So we had to then scramble and do the research to understand what is this industry about, what is their cost base, what does their value chain look like, right? What opportunities might be there to cut down costs, and then we need to go and work on the shop floor. I did a lot of shop floor work, and this is a very, very broad spectrum. I mean, I did work, like I said, I mean, my very first cost reduction engagement was for a printing press in Nagpur that was printing security documents, checks and financially legal tender documents, right? Those type of stuff. So they use special quality paper and printing process and all that. So that was my first engagement. But I've done work in the petrochemicals for a glass bottle manufacturer. I did a lot of work in the oil and gas space. I did plenty of work in the metals and mining space as well. I've done work with the pharma companies in India. So it's a fairly broad spectrum over a period of time. Anything ranging from business entry strategy on to M&A, acquisitions, valuations, to supply chain, cost reduction, performance improvement. So fairly broad spectrum of work, again, for a broad spectrum of industries. Over a period of time, though, I mean, I spent 20 years with Accenture. I gravitated more and more towards the natural resources industries. This is basically anything to do with natural resources. I mentioned oil and gas and metals and mining, forest products, paper, pulp, right? So that's where I did the bulk of my work. 70% of my work eventually fell in the space, in that particular space. Of course, it also meant that you had to go and work in some of the crazy places in India and on the planet. I mean, Nigeria and Angola, right? Rampura, Gucha in Rajasthan, for example. Fortunately, I mean, my wife decided to actually sacrifice her career so that we could be together. Otherwise, it was a very itinerant lifestyle right through those 20 years. Now, I used to be where the project was happening, and these projects were typically longish ones because Accenture was not just doing the strategy consulting bit. We were very core, deeply involved in implementing the recommendations that came out of any exercise. I'm talking about 1.5, 2-year engagements, for example, right, in the middle of the place where the mining is happening, right, and helping them improve overall equipment effectiveness, right, of their dumpers and excavators and trucks and so on, right. So that's the nature of the work that I did over that period of time. It was also a very interesting period for Accenture in India because Accenture, when I joined, we were still a management consulting practice only, but we then brought in technology and business process outsourcing, and I was fortunate to be a part of some of those early engagements as well. I mean, I remember this first application outsourcing engagement that Accenture brought into India, and I was the transition lead for that, and I spent a year and a half in the US taking over that engagement, right, from the client and bringing it back into India. So I had that experience of actually helping set up technology delivery capabilities as well during that period of time. And that helped me a great deal, right? I mean, later on, when I now look back at my time doing consulting work and doing a very, very eclectic mix of projects, I used to wonder then, right, what is this all going to amount to? But I now realize that no, every one of those engagements prepared me for the role, right, that I'm able to play today at LatentView Analytics. My last 5 years in Accenture, I dialed down a bit on the travel. My parents used to live in Chennai then, and we were based out of Mumbai, so we kind of found a halfway house in Bangalore. We moved here, and my parents also moved here, and I took up an internal role because of my background in supply chain. Accenture tapped me on the shoulder to run the talent supply chain for Accenture in India. It was a fairly massive operation because we were hiring some 2,000 people a month. Accenture by then had grown to about 150,000 people in India. So even a 10% attrition means that you have to hire 15,000 people just to backfill the attrition, right? And then on top of that, there was crazy growth that was happening. So 2,000 people a month was the order of the day, right? And we were facing a big significant challenge in renege on offers. People accepting offers, but not turning up on the date of joining, right? And that was as high as like 33-35%. So my very first statistically significant analytics exercise was to try and build a model that predicted whether a candidate that we were having a conversation with is a candidate likely to join us or not. Right? That was the first model that I got involved in building. I mean, we looked at some 50 different data points and parameters and then boiled it down to some 8 or 9 of them. That modeling exercise helped bring down the renege percentage from 33-35% down to about 19%, which was seen as a fairly significant win, right? For not only for the function, we were also going through our People CMM certification at the time, and PCMM requires the use of data analytics on your people processes as well. So I had the opportunity to don the hat of the HR analytics lead for Accenture in India for a period of time. And I helped build models related to attrition, predicting demand, predicting lead time for fulfilling, leadership, succession planning, and all of that. So that was a very interesting time for me, right? And that is the background with which I was able to come into LatentView. So when I came on board at LatentView, I joined as a chief people officer, right? Even though I had background in business and helping organizations with their strategic transformation, my first role in LatentView as chief of the talent function. And then I took over the role as CEO in April 2019.
So when you joined in 2016 as the Chief People's Officer, what was the team strength like back then?
I think we were about 400 people or so, 450 people. I mean, roughly that was the kind of number, or maybe 500 people, right around that.
Okay.
And obviously, I could go back and connect it to my early Accenture days. It was a small firm, very, very enthusiastic bunch of people willing to put up their hands and try new things, unsolved problems, and dive into the deep end of the pool and then learn, right, as part of that process. I mean, that kind of mindset was called for, right, given that not every problem had been solved and algorithms and approaches were still evolving, right, at the time. So therefore, I found it it was a very interesting mix of what I had done in my previous stint at Accenture, right? It was a good combination of the same kind of high-end, fuzzy, ill-defined problems, right? How do we solve them? But bringing the power of data analytics, right? And the statistically significant, which is what I did in my last 5 years in Accenture. So I saw it as a great opportunity to bring everything that I had done, right, in my past life into one unifying point. My mandate was to help build the processes and the foundation necessary to accelerate growth for the company. I mean, I think we were at the time about $27-30 million in terms of revenue. And Gopi, my predecessor, had ambitious plans for growth as well. But we realized that we had to make a few changes. And that is what I came on board, right, in terms of helping put those changes in place and moving the organization in the direction of growth.
So which year was that, Rajan?
2016, yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
So you joined as the people officer in 2016, and when you became the CEO in 2019. So how did this transition happen?
So the early work was very interesting. I mean, the very first exercise that I worked on was to revamp the employee value proposition. Right? I mean, not that we didn't have an employee value proposition. We were already able to attract a very high caliber talent. We used to go and hire from the best engineering colleges, the top MBA schools, and statistics and math campuses as well. But we also saw that the industry was poised for exponential growth, right, in the coming years, and that meant that we are able to articulate the career paths and the value propositions for our. I mean, there are people, for example, who wanted to do everything, right? They wanted to be not just the data scientist or the data engineer, but they also wanted to be in front of the client, right? Go and do the selling and the business development. There were others who said that, no, my life is going to be as a technical architect, right? And they just wanted to focus on a particular area, right? So there are others who said that I want to build a product or a solution, right? We had to find ways by which we could cater to the aspirations of each of those employees, right? And therefore that employee value proposition exercise was very important. It was very interesting exercise as well. I mean, there were 3-4 strong leaders within the company that I tapped for helping me with that exercise. So just in terms of articulating these aspirations that I talked about, but more importantly, how can we offer the right kind of learning and development options? How can we offer the career choices, the career progressions and the transitions that they could make? And how will the people organization support them, right, in that journey? We actually hit upon using the Kung Fu Panda movie as a theme for that. And you remember, right? I mean,
yes.
What is the secret ingredient type of a thing, right? I mean, and for us, the thinking was that everybody can be awesome, right? Everybody can be an awesome analytics professional. So the tagline was unlock the awesome, right?
Sure.
I mean, how can we help you unlock your awesome potential, right? So that you can be that analytics professional that you aspire to. So that was a very interesting exercise. I mean, and that led on to several initiatives that came out of it, right? Whether it was related to how we defined our career structure, how we organized ourselves. I mean, we started laying the foundations for organizing by industry verticals and capability horizontals. Before that, it was more of a amorphous team, like what I was used to in my Accenture days, early Accenture days. But of course, we wanted to put some of the structures in place so that people can start specializing in the area in line with the aspirations. We created an internal job portal mechanism that will open up and expose all the opportunities, right, that are coming our way, so that employees could choose how they will equip themselves for capitalizing on those opportunities. Sure. So we created a bouquet of L&D courses and offerings, right, that are available. But employees pick and choose what do they want to do because they have exposure to what are the new opportunities, right, that are coming our way. So we put in a lot of those kind of mechanisms. Interestingly, around that time, the person who was running the Bay Area practice, right, that person decided to move on and pursue something else. So Gopi, who was the CEO, he asked me to take over that business, the Bay Area. That is the biggest chunk of business that we had, right? I mean, technology and tech companies. So within about a year or year and a half of my coming on board, I had the opportunity to run the tech business as well, in addition to being the chief people officer. So that gave me even more of an exposure and insight into our clients, the conversations, kind of work that we were doing, and then influenced what is the shape and direction, right, in which we can take the company. So when 2019 January, Gopi decided that he will pursue something else at the time. So Venkat and Pramad then they asked me whether I would be interested in taking over, right?
I think that was a perfect background, perfect platform for you, having run the Bay business for some time. I think that was a perfect.
That helped a great deal, yeah.
Okay, so when in 2019, what was LatentView like in terms of revenue, size, and scale?
We were about 40 million in terms of revenues. We were probably 800 people or so at the time, right? We had grown a bit, and then we had a decent spectrum of capabilities. I mean, like I said, we used to do a lot of work at the front end of the value chain.
Sure.
But we also did work. We had started doing work in the area of supply chain analytics. There was work we were doing in HR analytics, an area that was particularly interesting for me. And we were already doing quite a bit of work in fraud and risk and compliance and so on. I mean, in general, even in the BFSI space, we were doing more work of fintech companies, right? And therefore, I mean, all these companies have tons of data, right, that they need to analyze and make sense of. So there was a fairly good spectrum of work that we were doing. The tech practice was still the largest practice for us. we had emerging practices in banking, financial services, in industrials, which is automotive and manufacturing, also in consumer goods and retail, but these were fairly small practices. We were actually doing the bulk of our business in the US at the time, 95% plus. Europe was a very small practice. We worked with a few marquee accounts in Europe. That was the nature of the business. We were still, as I said, organized by client portfolios. Okay. So one of the first things that I decided to move forward, right, with implementing was to reorganize ourselves by industry verticals as the main organizing dimension, because the thinking was that we need to have a lot more domain knowledge and understanding. Essentially, we were on this journey of going from being an execution partner to more of a thought partner and a consulting partner, meaning that don't just go and talk about what skills and competencies we bring to the table, but instead go with very specific solutions and value propositions that address the particular pain points and opportunities that clients are grappling with, right, in their industries. I mean, I used to use the example of Lego bricks, right? I mean, instead of going and throwing a bunch of Lego pieces on the table and asking the client, what do you want me to build with this? We started building things, a fuselage, an undercarriage, or a nose cone, or whatever, a missile assembly, right? And telling them that this is what you need. Because for the competitive intensity that you are facing in the environment, you need this in your armory. You need to build this solution and you need to capitalize on that opportunity. So that is the transition we had started making. And that led to that reorganization by industry verticals and capability horizontals. That's gone through a few rounds of changes since then, right, in terms of how do we look at industries and how do we look at capabilities. But the fundamental principle, underlying principle is the same, meaning how do we bring more and more of the domain understanding in addition to the technical and the math capability, so that we are able to marry all of that and then create solutions that address the particular pain points and opportunities, right, that the clients are facing in their context.
Absolutely. In fact, Rajan, understanding the domain and understanding the pain points at a higher business level, strategic level, I think that is what gets you an entry in most of the deals, at least in some of the larger deals. Obviously, all the analytics work can follow, but you get a foot in the door very, very easily.
Yeah.
And in fact, I can clearly see how the Accenture background clearly helped with all of your strategy and process and tech consulting work. Must have really helped in all of this.
It does. I mean, I used to joke around at the time that it is not necessary for you to have all the answers, but even if you can help ask the right questions, that can actually unlock a lot of value. Because more often than not, being a consulting and a thought partner means that you're able to be there for the client in helping them unravel the problem that they're facing. Most of these would be some fuzziness will be there, right, and ill-defined problems. And if you can be that partner who helps them bring a little bit more definition and meaning and structure right into the process, then that gets you that foot in the door, right? And that is the intention.
So the year, Rajan, is 2019, and right now we are looking at very interesting trends which are going to hit us. So I think we are looking at already the ascent of AI has started, right? So we are looking at how AI will be accelerated.
Right.
And in 2021, there is an important landmark event for the company, which is the IPO. And in 2022, we have the advent of Gen AI. So I'm just going to ask you first a question about what was the overall rationale behind listing, what were you looking at? And the second question is with regards to overall trends around Gen AI and how that has shaped the overall evolution and growth journey of LatentView.
Sure, yeah. No, I think for me, stepping into the CEO role in 2019, it's a little bit of a watershed moment because one, of course, we were going through that structural transformation, right, that I talked about. And whenever there is some change, it is not that everybody is going to like all the changes, right? So there was a little bit of that helping employees, the senior ones, right, understand, appreciate. Not everybody was aligned, so we also had to make some choices, right, in terms of how we move forward. So there's a bit of that 1.5 years, right, of a change journey, right, that we went through that came with a little bit of pain. But we took some hard calls. So for example, we used to have a 20% book of work, which was very pure staff augmentation, right, and on-site roles that too. So the margins were also slim. And it also meant that once you give somebody in a staff org model, they just disappear into the client organization. There is no real connect for the employee or for the client with LatentView, right? And it is more like you're just being a glorified recruitment consultant, right, rather than a real analytics partner. So we actually decided to cut away that business, right? We brought it down from 20% to almost less than 5%, right? And that meant giving up revenue, right, that we had in our bag. But we did decide to go through that pain, right, and then prepare ourselves so that we have a more solid foundation, right, for the kind of opportunities that we wanted to pursue. Just as some of those things got settled, COVID struck, right, and then there was this huge challenge around like, what do we do, right, in this time? Because everybody was worried about what is going to be the demand scenario, right? Will clients hold back on spending? We were also a little conservative at that time, right? We said that, no, let's preserve cash, for example, right? And then we can use the cash to unlock opportunities, right, when the opportunities arise. So there was that period of middling, I would say. But we started seeing signs of revival, right? Even about 6 months, 9 months into the pandemic, we started seeing signs of revival. And then that is the point we said that, no, maybe we should really capitalize on the opportunity that is laying ahead of us, and not just from a traditional standpoint, right, what we're doing in the past, but if possible, actually try and capitalize significantly in terms of what the market has to offer, right, as potential and opportunity. And that unlocking of that market opportunity and potential meant that we are more visible, we are more public in the eyes of talent, in the eyes of investors, clientele, right, all constituents, right, in some sense. So that is what the decision related to the IPO was. So the IPO is not just about raising money to do something. Of course, we did set apart almost a good chunk of the money that we raised for pursuing inorganic growth opportunities. But we had been a very profitable company, right, from our very early days, right? And we already had a good kitty, right, in terms of money that we could use for pursuing opportunities. This is more about unlocking the potential, right, in terms of the market. Like I said, no, visibility and the recognition that comes along with it, plus also the additional gravitas it lends, right? Being a public listed company means that you are already subject to a lot of scrutiny and evaluation and governance and all that. Not that we were not practicing those things before, but this now becomes visible to everybody, right? We were already working with KPMG as an auditor, for example, right, even before our IPO days, and therefore we had all the mechanisms in place, right, in terms of how to run a public listed company. But making the transition from private to public listed company brings all of that additional visibility, right, and that's what we wanted to capitalize on. It also meant unlocking a little bit of value for many of our earlier employees and alumni, right, who had been with us for long. So it was really that led to that decision, right, of the IPO. We also sense that that there is pent-up demand for a company with a different kind of a DNA and approach to decision making and optimization, because otherwise everybody was used to the IT services kind of a model, and we wanted to bring in a bit more, right, in terms of the solutions and the value props and the general thinking, right, the analytics rigor, right, artificial intelligence and machine learning, right, all of that was emerging at that time. And that's what really led to that successful IPO as well, right, in terms of subscription, oversubscription, and also the premium that we saw, right, on our listing. Since then, right, I mean, coming back to the question related to how it has evolved since the IPO, I think there were several other inflection points that happened, right, along the way. I think the one that everybody will now recall is the ChatGPT becoming publicly available, right?
30th November 2022.
And that suddenly, like, it meant that everybody knew what large language models were, and even, like, right from kids to very senior people, right, they could do something with it. It is not just some technology that you hear in ivory towers and an esoteric language, but it is something that you could play with on your phone, right? And that kind of, like, suddenly created a huge amount of visibility. Many of the precursors of large language models, like natural language processing and generation, were already in place. In fact, by that time, we were already working with all the big tech companies who are inventing. I mean, I mentioned Microsoft, but we work with the other big majors also, right? And therefore, we had a very front seat view, right, to the developments that are happening in the space, the precursors of these models, right? So we were familiar with that. I remember we built a solution called Casper, right, which was a conversational analytics platform, wherein any data that is there inside the company, right, enterprise data, you can bring Casper on top of it, and then it will help you interact with the data and generate the kind of charts and insights, right, and decision points through just natural language interaction. You just talk to it, and then it'll give the answers that you're looking for, right? So we were building some of those components, but LLM and OpenAI and ChatGPT kind of just made it explode, right, for everybody, right, in terms of the opportunity that it created. Since then, I mean, we have been taking a strategy which has been three-pronged, okay, in terms of how do we bring generative AI. I mean, I'll come to agentic AI subsequently, but generative AI, right? How do you bring the capabilities of generative AI to the fore? One was just to make sure that our own people are able to be a lot more productive and efficient in the work that we do, right? Using the code generation features, right, of large language models, for example, so that we can actually accelerate the process by which we are able to build the solutions and the services. Second was to build very specific Gen AI core solutions. I mean, I've talked about our AI pen pal solution and Laser, for example, right, on past occasions. Even the company that we acquired, Beagle GPT, right? I mean, Decision Points Beagle GPT, that's a core generative AI solution. So we also focused on building core Gen AI solutions, where Gen AI is the fundamental value proposition, of course, tied to a particular business domain, right, and a problem that we are solving. The third was to take a look at our entire solution spectrum and the services, and then create a Gen AI wrapper on them, because it makes it a lot easier for you to interact with that solution if you have a good Gen AI wrapper, because conversational interfaces are something that everybody was interested in. The ability to retain context, ask multiple queries so that you're able to dive deep into a particular area. So these are things that we were able to drive at that time. And the initial foray, right, into generative AI was really about these three aspects that I just mentioned. Of course, now everybody's talking about agentic AI at this time.
So what do you think about agentic AI? Is this hype? Is this real? Have you already started working on agentic AI projects for your clients?
See, as with any technology development, right, or breakthrough, there is always a bit of that hype cycle, right? I mean, and Gartner is famous for depicting it, on where it. In fact, I was just looking at the Gartner hype cycle and where they have pegged agentic. It's almost close to the inflection, the top of the before you hit the trough of disillusionment, and it is very interesting. I mean, in the sense that everybody is talking about agentic. There is enough example also that agentic can actually help automate a bunch of things. I mean, of course, a lot of those examples are in the consumer space. Talk about booking your tickets, or event attendance, or preparing your calendar and meeting, right, and those kind of things. There's a lot of agents that are getting created, but I have started seeing good examples of agentic architectures at play, even on an enterprise scale. I mean, we have been building some of them, and there are solutions that we have built, and we have already orchestrated that architecture, right, in particular for particular use cases. One example that comes to mind is the work that we are currently doing for one of the larger innerwear brands in the United States. They are one of the big names, and we have helped a generative AI plus agentic architecture to completely automate the process of what goes on their website in terms of content, right? And I'm talking about text content, video content, as well as visual content, right? This is what they use in their D2C channels to showcase the most important characteristics of the product, right, that they are building. I mean, everybody is looking for something, right, or the other. I mean, they're looking for example, organic, or I mean, it could be pure cotton, or it could be thread count, or it could be comfort in certain ways, right? And how do you bring those characteristics and qualities to the fore by using the power of generative AI and agentic, right? That's the solution that we have built. I see a lot of examples of startups building very interesting agentic architectures. In fact, over the last couple of months, you've been interacting with a startup. The revenues are probably less than $500,000 at this time, but they have actually put together an agentic architecture with hundreds of agents that automate the process of conducting any kind of research, right? This is typically work that the larger consulting firms, when they're dealing with fuzzy problems, like I want to do a market study for a particular new product that I'm thinking of. How do you automate that process, right? Of course, you still need to identify the data sources and where do you want to point it to. But once you've done that, right, the agentic architecture is able to actually go and do right from breaking down the fuzzy problem into all the component parts, spinning off of all those different agents to go gather the data, do the analysis, put it together, and then present and come up with a report that addresses that. We ourselves have done something similar when it comes to automating the process of generating the first version of an analyst report. I mean, we were talking earlier today, right before the podcast, and I know that you have background and experiences in doing that kind of analytics. This is for an investment banking kind of a scenario. They actually put out analyst reports on every company that they are tracking. How do you generate the first version of that report using agentic and generative AI, right? So again, to come back to your question, I think there are good examples. Of course, you still have to contend with several important aspects. Most important is, I would say that any approach that leverages generative and agentic means that you're bringing a probabilistic approach, oftentimes to a deterministic problem, right? So that reconciliation of determinism and probabilistic, I think that's a very important resolution. Of course, companies are approaching that through different techniques. You can build a retrieval augmented generative mechanism, you can build semantic layers, you can build small language models, reasoning layers and all that, so that you're able to put some boundaries around the probabilistic nature of the process so that you don't end up with too much of hallucination, right? So hallucination is the biggest thing, right? The other thing is black box versus transparency. Inherently, many of these algorithms, it is as much as saying that you ask a human, right, to describe the process by which they are making a decision, right? Whether it is buying a house or a car, whether they want to work with a certain company or a vendor, for example, right? Of course, they will list down a lot of objective parameters and characteristics, but if you ask them to put on a very specific mathematical algorithm, it might be difficult, right? There is something called gut feeling and intuition, right, that you bring, which could be the accumulated knowledge that you have over your last 15 years or 20 years of experience. And sometimes you will lead with that. So that art of marrying what can be very objective and algorithmic with what can be human intuition, right? I think that is an important aspect, right, that enterprises will want to grapple with, because at the end of the day, decisions that enterprises make, they need to take responsibility and accountability for it. You can't blame an algorithm, right? I mean, I'm sure that there are several examples, right? I mean, if you deny an insurance policy or a coverage to somebody, right? Or if an automobile gets involved in an accident, right? Who takes accountability and responsibility for it? It can't be the algorithm. It has to be the people behind the algorithm, the people who stand behind that algorithm, right? I think they need to take accountability. So these are challenges that you will still need to handle, right? Governance and ethics and accountability and so on. I think that is the biggest debate that we all need to have, right? I'm sure that agentic architectures and generative AI will continue to get even more sophisticated. They'll get better. I know that there is also something called the thermodynamic limit of how much evolution can happen, because all these are energy consuming processes, right? I mean, the larger the LLM, the more energy it takes up, and everybody's talking about building bigger data centers which are nuclear powered and so on. But there are also fundamentally different approaches, right, that are evolving. I just read recently that while an LLM takes 400,000 hours of learning to reach a certain level of sophistication, a human child, right, needs only 16,000 hours of observation before it reaches or surpasses that, right? Humans, we learn more through visual cues and observation. And I think that is a very, very important aspect. I mean, we talk about AI ethics and what mechanisms do we put in place. I think the biggest thing is that the responsibility that we all need to take. When I say we all, I'm not just talking about companies, humans, right? As a species and as humanity, we need to behave well around AI. It's almost like a child, right? It is not going to be governed by the rules alone that you put, because you can tell a child any number of rules. But if you behave differently in front of the child, then the child is going to learn by your behavior rather than the rules that you put, right? I think we are at the same kind of at a point, right, in the evolution of these technologies.
Very interesting, Rajan. So thank you for sharing those observations. So in that thread, since we are talking about overall trends, And I think you rightly pointed about the debate about AI explainability, ethics, and governance. Let me also ask a question about another debate that is very, very hot right now in the Indian IT industry. I think with the launch of GPT-5 and right now people are talking about Gen AI and agentic AI. What do you think is the overall prediction about the Indian IT services industry? Do you think that there is going to be certain revenue hit for Indian IT services companies?
Yeah.
Do they need some kind of navigating through this particular trend? Do they need to do something differently?
I think we are definitely going to experience some significant disruption that I think is something that is dawning on everybody now. When I say disruption, it need not necessarily be a negative connotation to that, though. Okay, because many of the technological advances that we have experienced in the past, there has been disruption, but the disruption has opened up and created a lot more possibilities. I mean, think of landline to mobile telephone, right, or the advent of internet, or even computers and personal computing.
Recently, cloud,
right? Cloud, right? Yeah. Handheld mobile devices, right? Every one of those technologies was disruptive in some way or the other. So disruption by itself is not necessarily a bad thing or a bad word. It's really the question of like, how do we adapt to it, right? And how do we unlock more opportunities for everybody, for humanity, right, in general. So that's how I tend to look at it. I am encouraged a lot by what I see in terms of the enthusiasm shown by youngsters passing out of colleges who are ready to take on the challenges of building a better tomorrow, right? In terms of identifying very specific problems that they can now solve for. Only yesterday, I was reading about this example of somebody who has built a startup which has gone from, I don't know, zero to a significant amount of revenue in a very short period of time. There were two things that were being talked about, right? One was the fact that this person had no technical understanding or knowledge, but today the technologies that are available help you to build a product and a solution, right, that addresses that pain point, right, that they are looking at. And the second thing is that they were able to do it almost single-handedly. You don't even need a huge army, traditional organizational models, right? All of those things are also going out of the window. This morning, I read an article about how very soon we could have a $1 billion unicorn, right, where there is only one employee, right? And that is the kind of thing that we're talking about. There are 100,000 problems that still are waiting to be solved in the world, right? I think the disruption that is happening now is that it can make everybody who is creative, who is positively inclined towards solving the problem, becoming a builder of sorts. Anybody can be a builder, right? I remember this cartoon movie called Robots. I don't know whether you've seen it. No. See a problem, fix a problem, right? That was the theme in that, right? And there is this young robo which is interested in making it big, and it is always continuously inventing something, right? I'm reminded of that movie, right? I mean, you see something and you want to fix it. Today there's an opportunity to do it. To go back to that example that I was quoting, this lady experienced pain because of the loss of her father to cancer or something like that. And then she stuck upon the idea that there are many people who go through those kind of experiences without adequate support. So she has created a platform called Solace. I think that's what it's called, Solace, right?
Solace.
Offering comfort. And it's been built single-handedly, right, by leveraging an incubator that is able to bring all the relevant tools and technologies, right, into play. I think that is something that encourages me a great deal, right? That it will unlock the potential, and it almost creates a level playing field. Of course, there are still questions about who will own those technologies. Sure. Will the big companies still crowd out younger and smaller companies and all that? But I think when you start creating these kind of platforms, there will be an explosion of sorts, right? It's like the Cambrian evolution that happened, right? Biologically, right? There's a particular period of phase time on the earth where suddenly like biological evolution just like went ahead by leaps and bounds, right? Because of just the conditions that were prevailing, right, in the biosphere. I think we are kind of at that type of an inflection point, right, when it comes to the technosphere, right, of sorts. Now, the other aspect of it, right, IT services and all that, I think that this will also mean that you don't need traditional models, right? I am starting to see already a significant amount of overlap between what used to be considered traditional IT services, right? Application custom development, ERP implementation, enhancement, and maintenance, and so on, right? And even what is being done in business process outsourcing, for example, right? Including process automation, starting to overlap with what you can do using data analytics and generative and agentic AI, because now you have feedback mechanisms. Analytics is a very important component of it, and you can automate a lot of that stuff, right? So there is going to be an effect around expanding it's a flywheel effect of sorts, right? It kind of creates more and more opportunities, right, for people within the data analytics space as well. So I'm really excited by what the future brings.
Great. So I'm actually tempted, Rajan, to ask you one more question, and then we will move on to other sections. How do you see the opening of the office of OpenAI in India?
I mean, I know that there are multiple connotations that can be given to that. I mean, obviously the one that everybody will think about is like, do you want to be in the technology capital of the country? Do you want to be in the commercial capital of the country? Do you want to be in the political capital of the country, and so on? So I won't go there. I think it is interesting though, right, that we are seeing some of this, right? I mean, see, India is a big market, right? Nobody can ignore the fact that India is a big market just from a consumer, both B2B and B2C perspective. So any large company, they will need to take India, if not as a developer and a builder, right, at least as a consumer of sorts, right? Now, given the technical competence and the capability that we have in the country, I'm sure that we are going to be part of the building of solutions as well. I mean, just like how certain platforms get built in other parts, right, and then we get involved, right, in enhancing and building it out further. I think that's in some sense, I feel that this could be a precursor, right, of what is to come, right, with other tech companies. That coupled with the fact that our own ecosystem that we are creating in India for startups and how companies can actually build out of India, not just for India, but for the entire world, that is also very, very encouraging. And I'm expecting that there'll be a lot more action right on that front.
Okay, great. So till now, in this podcast, we have actually traced the evolution from 2006 till now. Let me quickly ask you about the future of LatentView as you see it. So let me ask this in a fun way. What's your favorite Netflix series or any Amazon Prime series? What's the favorite series that you've watched so far?
I mean, I like a bit of the science fiction genre.
Okay.
Right. I mean, so even things like Person of Interest and Westworld, Peripheral.
Okay.
Right. More recently, I started watching Altered Carbon. Right.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the next season of the Three-Body Problem. I mean, these are the kind of things that I read a lot in that area as well. So it's always exciting to see what filmmakers and creative people are imagining, right? What the world of tomorrow is going to look like, and what kind of technologies will become important, right, in the scheme of things. If you see the evolution and the parallels between the entertainment industry and how technology itself has evolved, many things that we might have seen as magic almost. Harry Potter, I remember opening the newspaper with moving images. I mean, that became the iPad, right, when it happened eventually. I mean, so therefore I do watch quite a bit of that stuff.
So taking that prop of science fiction and web series, so what is, and you're actually waiting for the next season, you mentioned of one web series, right?
The Three-Body Problem.
Yeah. Three-Body Problem. So what's the next season for LatentView 5 years from now?
I believe that the opportunity that I mentioned earlier, right, in terms of the expanding wheelhouse, which is coming about because of the overlap that I'm starting to see between IT services and data analytics, I think that's an area where I believe that the next set of opportunities will get created for us, right? And that'll be the next inflection point. In some sense, I feel that, I mean, a lot of the IT infrastructure that has been built till date, they are all systems of record, right, in a significant way, right? And there's a lot of money that's been spent on systems of record, and even within systems of record, right, multiple evolutions of that, right, into more and more sophisticated ways of collecting and organizing the data, right, replatforming and all of that. But when it comes to decision making and optimization, a lot of it still happens outside of those systems, right?
Sure.
Which is where data analytics plays the role. I see more integration happening on that front, right? So when I talk about generative and agentic AI and your ability to actually do things which are examples where you need to do optimize for the company, right, and not for a particular function. That is where an agentic architecture can be really, really valuable. I mean, you can spin off an agentic architecture and create 1,000 instances of it or 1,000,000 instances of it to try out different combinations and then arrive at the right kind of solution. And you can do it on a continual basis, evolving real time, right? Those possibilities are really interesting. And I think that's where the play will be.
And I'm going to ask certain questions about the overall future evolution. And what are your priorities in terms of services? I think we have all looked at how LatentView has evolved from traditional analytics to including AI, Gen AI, agentic AI services. Right. So what do you foresee for the next 3 to 5 years going ahead in terms of services, in terms of partnerships? I think, Rajan, we also need to talk about partnerships.
Sure.
Because when we talk about technology partnerships, for example, Databricks, I think Databricks is one of the key partnerships for you.
Yep.
So how do you see that evolving in your future journey?
Yeah, I think the partnership thing fits in with how we intend to take things forward, right? Sure. On the particular question that you asked. Of course, I mean, till date we have been largely a bespoke consulting services kind of a firm of sorts, focused on the data analytics, right? How to use the power of data and analytics to solve the problems and address the opportunities. I think there will be more and more of creation of solutions, platforms and products, okay, in the future. Not everything will have 100% services kind of a model. A lot of it is likely to evolve in the form of how do we use a combination. I mean, if not exclusively, I mean, a complete product model would mean that you build a product or a platform and then you sell it, and then that's what the client uses. But even if you look at a Palantir, for example, right, they've built a fantastic product and an analytics platform, but they still need their forward deployed engineers, as they call them, right, to make that platform effective in the context of that enterprise. And I see that is the kind of model. One thing that I keep thinking about is the exploding optionality that you're going to have, right, in this entire space, especially when it comes to generative AI and agentic AI type of architectures. You have 100 choices in every layer, right? Whether it is the data layer or the LLM layer, or the small language and the RAG model, or whether it is the reasoning models that you're building, or whether it is the generative AI and the agentic and the agent components, right? With every one of them, you're going to have so many choices, right, that clients will find it hard to figure out how do they put together an architecture that works for them, right? So one of the things that we are currently doing is to build those reference architectures for what class of problems, type of problems, in which domains, what reference architectures work well. And we are not just going to build those reference architectures on paper, we are actually building out many of them in practice, either as part of client engagements or even ahead of the curve, so that we are able to go and showcase to them, right, that this is the reference architecture that works in your context, and this is how you can make use of all of that exploding optionality and the new choices that are available in front of you. It'll mean that we also do a lot more R&D and experimentation, that we will be building those solutions and those platforms, right, ahead of the curve, so that we can take them into client conversations. And some of them will evolve into products as well. I mean, I talked about what we built, Casper and Smart Innovation, for example, Beagle GPT, the decision point, the company that we acquired have built, right? We will look to build more of them as well. So there is going to be that big focus, right, on the reference architectures and what we build. We also see that this is not something that we can go at it alone, right? Like I mentioned earlier, this is creating a level playing field. The number of builders is exploding, and I see so many of these startups and companies, right, that are building very, very cool stuff, right? And we want to explore that in 3 models, right? One would be an outright acquisition of sorts, right? You know, if you're able to acquire that company and bring them. Second would be a partnership, right, where we just partner with them and we go to market together, right? So that we're able to bring a broader assortment of capabilities, right, into the conversation. The third is even strategic investments in these companies. So these won't be acquisitions, but we'll make early stage investments, right, through a ventures arm of sort. And this is something that we are contemplating. And we are almost like in the process of moving forward with that. And we've been evaluating a few companies as well, right, where we could make anything from $1 million to $10 million kind of an investment in these companies, so that we have a strategic stake in the company and how it evolves, right, and how those solutions could benefit the clientele and the prospects that we are working with as well. So it's going to be a combination of all of that. There will be very large partnerships, like the Databricks partnership. I mean, they are much larger than we are, right? All the stuff that I talked about, right? I mean, this entire AI, ML, generative AI and agentic AI solution, all of that needs a very, very, very strong data backbone, right? A high quality data backbone and an orchestration platform. And that's what a Fabric or a Databricks or a Snowflake bring to the table, right? And therefore it is, we see that as a very integral aspect of how we will evolve, right? That we are able to work in that ecosystem together. I mean, interestingly, even a large company like a Microsoft and a Databricks and a Google, right? While they compete on certain areas, they also collaborate on many of them, right?
Absolutely.
Clients might be already on a multi-cloud platform, but they might want to use a Databricks layer just to do the analytics.
Yes.
And if Databricks insists that you have to get out of all of that and then bring all the data into my platform, that may not be acceptable, right? Yeah. So in some sense, while they're all competing, they're also collaborating. So I see that ecosystem, therefore, as one in which there'll be greater collaboration and partnership, right, evolving in the future.
Co-optation.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have the CEO of one public listed company, and it would not be fair if I don't ask this question. What is your revenue projection for the next 2-3 years?
So we have publicly stated our ambitions of doubling our revenue in the next 3 years. I mean, last year, the year ended March 31st, 2025, we did about $100 million in revenue. Our ambition is to get to the 200 million mark. I mean, we see that as 100 million was a good milestone.
Sure.
The next that we have set our eyes on is doubling that in a 3-year time frame. That's the path that we are on at this time. Of course, there are multiple uncertainties that you'll have to encounter along the way, right? Including in no small measure the current tariff-related concerns, right, that are prevailing, and more so. I mean, I don't know whether tariffs will spill over into the services space, but even if it doesn't, even if it is restricted to the other areas, right, goods, you still have a challenge, because when companies are in an uncertain environment, they are reluctant, right, and less than enthusiastic to go ahead and spend money on bigger initiatives, right? So there will be an impact of that. But with all that, we are still seeing good traction for what we are building. We just need a little bit of that winds to blow, right, in our favor as well. And if that happens, I mean, I see that doubling happening in a 3-year time frame. And from then on, there'll be other mountains to climb. I mean, I think 500 would be the next ambition right after that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So in fact, on that note, Rajan, thank you so much for this conversation. I think in today's podcast, we have discussed a lot of topics. We have explored your background, and I could very clearly see a glee in your eye when you were talking about your Accenture days, 20 long years. You worked on diverse projects, and I could also see smiles when you were talking about your team, talent, culture. I think your journey has been from a strategy business process consultant to people chief people officer, and then obviously you are the CEO of LatentView right now. LatentView is a fantastic company to be featured in Deloitte Top 50 for a very, very long period of time, and that is also substantiated by the overall revenue growth that you have registered. And not only that, it is a profitable company. All of these things are very, very commendable points on the part of LatentView. I would like to take the opportunity to wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed this conversation.
I did, yeah. It was my pleasure. Thanks, Sandeep. Yeah, really
thank you so much
for having me here. Cheers.
Thank you so much. So from decision trees to making decisions at scale, if you look at LatentView's story, I think that is proof enough that if you have focused dreams, they can turn into billion-dollar realities. Thank you for tuning in. It has been a wonderful conversation. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Until the next podcast, this is Sandeep Sharma, your host for this podcast, signing off.